guys, we are back again with another episode of Dynasty Queens. I'm your girl, Nia J. And as always, I have my lovely co-host,
Pamela Nicole. What's up, y'all?
Yes. Today we have a very special guest in the building, guys. We have the lovely Miss April Lancit with us. Let's give her a round of applause.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Yes, welcome to the Dynasty House, April.
Yes, welcome.
Yes, thanks for having me.
Yes, absolutely. So, April,
Mm-hmm.
go ahead and give the viewers out there a little bit of insight on your upbringing, where you came from, and, you know, what you do, a little synopsis of what you do for a living.
Yeah, so my name is April Lancit, and I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist. I've been doing this work for about 18 years. I am a founder of a private practice called April Lancit and Associates. We just celebrated our 10th anniversary this year, and born and raised here in Philadelphia.
Okay, love that. Okay. So, April, as a young woman, did you have the discernment of knowing that you wanted to help people at a young age?
You know, I don't think that I knew that that was going to be my calling. I just know that people always sat with me and felt comfortable telling me their stories. Mm-hmm. And I think that that's when I started to know. But I don't think that I woke up in the morning and said, I'm going to be a therapist. Gotcha. But I do think that there's something that a therapist embodies, and I think you know that early on. And I just remember always having people just sit next to me, tell me their story, want to talk, and I've always been a good listener.
Okay. Mm-hmm. I love that. And I feel that on her. Like, she has a very kind, warm, empathetic spirit. You know what I mean?
Thank you.
And you can just kind of feel that on people.
Mm-hmm.
Have you always felt like as a young kid to just anything, everyone would just spill it on you?
Yeah, I mean, yes. I mean, everything that would go on as a kid, you observe it, you watch. Some things you don't understand at a young age, and then you get older, and then you start to realize, oh, that's what that was. Oh, why does this family member don't talk to this family member? Why is there tension here? Why are things the way that they are? And then when you get older, you start to put things together, and you begin to realize that this is much bigger than just we're not talking.
Gotcha.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard too when you're young.
It is.
You don't really understand. Right.
Saying, you're still trying to navigate things. You don't really, things aren't figured out.
Mm-hmm.
And then as you get older, you kind of see dynamics in
sure.
families.
Mm-hmm.
And I think a lot of the time people are disappointed when they get the real glimpse of hey, okay, my family is not perfect, or, whatever
sure.
the situation may be.
Sure.
So that's pretty cool.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So, as a young woman,
mm-hmm.
tell us about your journey of you went to school, and then when did you first realize that you did have a gift for, helping people, or that was going to be a thing that you were going to do for a living?
Yeah, so I am a Philadelphia native. So I've been born, raised here, went to Philadelphia public schools, and I actually went to college at LaSalle University. Currently, I am the director and program director of the marriage and family therapy program there. Okay. So I kind of came back to my alma mater. Yeah. And then I was in the field of psychology. I actually started out as a bachelor's level therapist working with people who had severe diagnoses. Mm-hmm. And later on, I decided something was missing. And the part that was missing was that I realized that people would come in a partial program, they would have these mental health breakdowns, and then they go back to the same environment, mm-hmm. and their families was never involved. Gotcha. And so that was when I decided, okay, I really want to work with families. Mm-hmm. And then I went to Drexel, got my master's degree in marriage and family therapy. And then it was there that I discovered I wanted to work with couples. Okay. So that's what I do. Gotcha. That is my niche, is couples therapy.
Gotcha.
Yes.
Wow. That's just a lot to, I just think of you think about marriage counseling and couples mm-hmm. therapy and, being in a relationship, it makes me think what would I want to talk to my partner about if they're open and willing to.
Sure.
You know what I mean? What would you say is probably the top 2 reasons people go to couples therapy or marriage counseling?
Usually when people come to couples therapy, they'll usually say that they're coming because of miscommunication. Usually it'll be something about finances. And I know you said 2, but 3 is infidelity. That's like 3. And so people come wanting to work on those issues. And then when they get there, they begin to realize that it's so much more than just the 3 things that they could be coming for.
Wow. So it's like peeling layers off of an orange. Do you feel a lot of the time with the couples that you talk to that secretly they know, that there's more under the surface? Or are you feeling that you have to probe people, or are they holding back? What do you see more of?
I see that sometimes it doesn't necessarily mean that because you've been with someone for 10 years that you are completely vulnerable and that you are completely intimate with your partner. I've seen partners who lay next to each other every night, but they carry many secrets and they don't always disclose their true self with their partner. And so when they come to therapy, I look at things from a systemic perspective, a relational perspective. So I'm looking at patterns, interactions. I'm looking at your family of origin. I'm looking at all of those pieces of what makes you the person you are and what you bring to the relationship and how that then impacts how you show up in that relationship.
Okay. That's a fair assessment.
It is. So you think about that stuff, you kind of just, we're all adults, we're busy, we go through emotions and stuff, so it's interesting to just kind of just sit back, and really just like pick and pinpoint like those little bitty details about,
Sure.
This could be a reason why, we don't talk this much, or, whatever the case may be.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
When you're sitting with couples, do you find that it's harder to get information out of the woman, the male, or who is it harder to kind of break that wall down with first?
I want to say the myth is that the men are the ones that's the hardest, but when they sit on the couch, they sit on the couch and they really lean in and, they'll come to me and they'll say, oh, well, therapy's not my thing, and I mostly work with Black and brown couples and they'll be like, oh, we don't do that in our community. We don't talk about our problems. Right. But then they sit on the couch and they be like, and another thing, April, and another thing. And you know what? All of that begins to come out and unpack. And then sometimes their partners is like, well, I didn't know you felt like this. I didn't know you thought this. So they tend to talk a little bit more. Sometimes I think my female clients, they have to fill you out first. They have to check and see, like, are you able to do this work? Are you able to support me on my journey? Can I be safe in this environment with you? And then they also want to check your credentials, right? They want to be like, well, where'd you go to school? How long you did this? Are you married? Do you have kids? Like, how can you help us? And that's what I see.
Do you take any offense to that when, when sometimes these women are like, well, what is she really about? Do you take any offense to that, or you've kind of over the years just kind of...
No, I don't. I think that even though I work with people of all walks of life, I think that people of color, marginalized people, are often put in environments that they don't always get to ask the questions. So I think being a person that's open for them to ask the questions, I think that helps them feel comfortable and that they know what they're about to get into. Right. Yes. And they're going to pay for this, right? And you want to make sure what you're paying for is your money's worth.
Exactly. Okay.
Yeah.
And then another thing too to add on to that, you've got all these deep-rooted things you maybe have talked to maybe one or two people about, or maybe never spoken about. So it's the vulnerability too that you're like, absolutely, it's that fight or flight. Yeah, if you will, sure. Like, I don't know if I should. I don't know you like that. Like,
sure.
I don't know. Let's see what's going on with me.
Yeah. Sure. I think that's a fair assessment for someone to feel that they don't know you well and should I tell you this or not? And that takes a while. And once they warm up to me, most of my clients, they enjoy me.
Right.
Yeah.
It's like they like me. Yeah. Once they get to know me and stuff. Okay. So just off of memory, what was like a situation or a couple that you feel you've really helped them leap over some huge hurdles and now they're like on the other side and they're like, thank you so much. A couple that really stands out to you in that regard?
I would say that there's so many couples that stand out to me.
I love that. Yeah,
but
that's beautiful. Success story.
What I would say is that It is a wonderful feeling to be the fly on the wall of somebody's journey.
Okay.
And I've seen couples that have been on the brink of their relationship coming to an end, their marriage coming to an end.
Yeah.
I've seen people get divorced and get back together. I've watched couples go through the whole process of doing pre-marriage work with me and then taking all the steps and then getting married to the point that they invite me to the wedding. But I didn't go, but I did watch it online just to let them know that I was there, there in spirit. But I've watched tremendous journeys, and I've watched people overcome just infidelity, insecurities, issues with trust. I'm not a financial guru, but I've had a lot of couples really have significant breakdowns over finances, and just being able to talk about the impact of that in their relationship, because I think everybody has a money story. So either you grew up having money or you grew up not having money, and you grew up learning what money is about and how you use it. And then when you get into a relationship, you might have different ideas about how money should be spent or used in the relationship. And so that's always interesting to see how couples come to that journey of how they're going to navigate that.
Okay. Do you feel that a lot of the time when people first get together, there's things they're not talking about?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. I think in the beginning, I always call it, like, people talk about, when you get married, you go on a honeymoon. But when you're dating, it's a honeymoon too, because you want to be cute. I'm cute. We're cute. We're doing all the cute things. We're going out. We're having dinner. We're having fun. You're spending money. I'm spending money. But then when that starts to settle, there's just you and that person. And it's you and your vulnerability and your intimacy. It's what your expectations are, what you want. And some people don't always make their expectations clear in the beginning. Sometimes they don't say, well, I actually didn't know that that's what I wanted until now. And so I find that a lot of couples don't necessarily go through pre-marriage counseling. And I get them after they got married. And like, well, I got married. And sometimes I take them back through pre-marriage counseling, even though they didn't got married. I'm like, well, let's go back through this and let's see, like, what are the things that are coming up. And so I do assessments with couples so they can be able to see for themselves, here are the tender spots in your relationship. And if you work on these things, it'll improve and you guys will be able to better manage what's happening.
Okay.
With that, she's saying, with everyone, we all have baggage.
Sure.
I kind of like put in like family therapy and couples therapy, kind of like it's like a happy marriage, just because we have so many people out here with generational curses, is what they call it now. So how do you get into that with couples? Do you like navigate those like generational curses that people go through that affect their marriages?
Absolutely. Some of the couples will come in and they'll say, like, this is the first time I'm getting married. Not everybody in my family is married. I'm coming here and I want to do this right. I want to do this for myself and my relationship. And sometimes they have been parents or in-laws or cousins that have been married and like, this is what I don't want. This is what I don't want to do. And so they'll come in with that mindset. And then when it comes to like the generational patterns, they just remember things from their upbringing that they didn't like, that didn't feel good to them, that felt scary or hard or discomfort. And then they say like, well, I don't want to do that in my marriage. So I want us to like figure out how we can talk about like these really hard things. So an example of that could be, let's say you grew up in a family where you never really talked about conflict and people just walked around giving each other the silent treatment. So there's a chance that when you get in your relationship with your partner, when you have conflict, y'all are going to give each other the silent treatment instead of learning to effectively talk about it. And there's some people who give the silent treatment for days on end, weeks on end, don't talk for a month. They only ask, well, are you good? I'm good. Did the kids eat? They ate. All right. And that's how it'll be.
Right. So pretty much people just existing. Not even living because they didn't understand. They didn't have a foundation to begin with. Or what do you see more of? I'm going to ask you. Do you see more people who didn't build a foundation or people that just grew apart?
I would say people who don't have tough conversations, who are, there's some people who hold this narrative in their mind that having a tough conversation means it's a conflict. And it isn't always a conflict, and it doesn't always have to be negative.
Okay.
So they'll avoid certain topics, and then it just don't ever get talked about. And then when you do finally talk about it, you're blowing up. And I see that a lot with the men. The men do that. They'll finally blow up, and then they'll say a whole bunch of things, but they never said this one thing. And so usually the spouse will be like, what?
Yeah.
I didn't know you felt like this. And so I think if you have more intentional conversations, and if something does rub you the wrong way, if you address it sooner, I think that you can resolve it sooner versus it going on for years. I see a lot of couples that have continuous arguments. They argue about the same thing. And it's because they haven't really got to the root of the problem. They haven't really resolved it. They just put a Band-Aid over it until the next time. And then somebody rips that Band-Aid off, and now they're not speaking to each other, or they're at odds. And I think like the worst thing that happens in relationship is when you start making threats about leaving, and that just brings up people's attachment and vulnerability and insecurities about where they stand in that person's life.
Today's episode of Dynasty Queens is brought to you by Drip Top, the newest, hottest trend in fashion. You guys, if you love fashion, being a trendsetter, looking your best, you can have it all in the palm of your hand. This Drip Top app is what it's about. Fresh trends in fashion. Please believe me, we know what's up. Whether you're into streetwear, the chic style, it doesn't matter. You can be going out a night in the town. We got you. Make sure you check us out. Browse this app. It's at just the drop and click of the tap of the screen. Let's roll. Drip Top.
And the best part of it too is it's not just about discovering new fashion. It's about the community. It's a full-on community. So you can follow your favorite content creators. You can get tips and tricks to your fashion, whatever you want to do. And on top of that, you can level up your style.
Right.
It's a great thing. So y'all go ahead and download the Drip Top app. You can get it on Google Play and the App Store, Apple Store. And go ahead and look it up. It's Drip Top, DRIPTOCK, and level up your style today. Also, go ahead and visit the website at www.driptop.com, or you can go ahead and scan the QR code right here on our screen. Y'all, don't forget, stay bold, stay fresh, and stay all together with Drip Talk. Right. I actually am interested to know, as a therapist, is it heavier for you to deal with like the family aspect of therapy or the marriage aspect? What holds a little bit more?
I would say couples are a lot of work.
Okay.
So couples therapy tends to be a little harder. I enjoy having families. Usually when I work with someone, I always want to know who are the important people in their life, and would they want to be a part of this process with you. So I'm always open to inviting different members in the family, especially if you talking about them every single week and they're not a part of this process. It doesn't make sense to me. But couples, I think, is probably the hardest because sometimes somebody wants to be right. And when it's the relationship, it's not necessarily about who's right. It's about what's going to make this relationship work so that we both get our needs met. And they don't understand that. They just want to be right.
Right.
She made a good point saying that. There's actually a book me and my mom actually just finished reading called Why Does He Do That? And it's a therapy book. It talks about different types of men and, how to pinpoint the different things. Like there's the Mr. Always Right and Mr. Militant. There's the Mr. Emotional. I'm sure you've gone through every single one of those type of men.
Wow.
But as a woman, and as a female therapist, do you feel that usually, not to say like who's right or wrong, but do you feel like most of the time it's equal on the playing field about who has the biggest conflict in the relationship, or do you feel like one sex has a little bit more than the other?
I would say that I feel like whenever a couples comes to therapy, there is something that both people have done to contribute to the problem. Now, there might be one who's doing a lot more harm than the other, but I do think the circle that they get into is something that they're both doing that got them in this dance in the first place. And they just have to be accountable on their role of what got them there. And sometimes when they come to couples therapy, it's more like, well, she did this, he did that, and that's how they want to look at it. And then I try to help them to see like, well, you both have done something to get you here, and here's where it is. And sometimes that's hard because when a person feels hurt about something, or they feel like trust has been broken, or the partner did some sort of betrayal or something to damage the relationship, they're not able to see their role in it at that moment. They just know that I am hurt and it's your job to fix it, and I need you to meet my needs right now. And if you can't do that, then we're going to keep having this problem.
Right. So who do you, since we're on that topic, who do you think between men and women is more receptive to owning up to their end of the problem? Or who is going to be like, okay, yeah, you're right. Who's harder to like crack through?
I would say sometimes the men are. Okay. Right? Because they sometimes like, what are you going to tell me? Right. How do you know that you can help me? I could just talk to my homeboy down the street. He's going to tell me, and I'm like, well, maybe not. I think sometimes they're a little harder, but I do think that comes with the notion of masculinity, and that you have to be strong, you have to be hard, you can't be vulnerable. If I'm like this, then this is too sensitive. And so I do think sometimes it takes them a little while to warm up to the process and lean into, oh, you want me to talk about my feelings? Oh, I need to actually tell her that she hurt my feelings, or that I felt invalidated as a man, or that you made me feel emasculated as a man. And that's a hard thing to tell your partner if you don't talk like that every single day. And so that's why I would say it's a little harder. I feel like women, we always say what we need to say. You know, we may need to tone it down the way that we say it because we'll pile it all on, and they can't hear all the piles. They just, we just go, and another thing. And you know what? You didn't do this too. And so that's the part that they start tuning us out, and they miss the beat on that. So I usually try to get the women in therapy to slow it down. Let's focus on this one thing, and let's see what happens here. And then the men, I just get them to open up more, to be more vulnerable, to ask the questions. One of my favorite activity I love to do with my couples, I call it fill in the blank. And so I usually say, okay, I'm going to give you something to say, and when I stop, you're going to fill in the blank. So it could be something like, I feel sad when you do, and then they have to fill in the blank. And then the other side would be the partner has to say the same thing. And it might be, you know, I get angry when you don't. Gotcha. And then they fill in the blank. And sometimes when they hear what their partner says on the other end of it, they're like, okay, you never said it to me like that before. So being able to hear them in a different light.
I think that's so important, because I think the number one issue between men and women in relationships is a miscommunication and a total misunderstanding of what the other person or party is saying. And I think you really hit the nail on the head when you say that as women sometimes, because I'm definitely guilty, can kind of go down the line. And another thing, you know, and that's a really, you know, a bad habit that a lot of us gals have is girl, and not taking accountability for oneself is huge. And I think women, we're taught since we're little that we're kind of privy to being right in a lot of situations. Oh, girl, he's, you know, and a lot of times friends will kind of amp you up like, oh, yeah, girl, tell him whatever. And it's the wrong advice, especially if you want your stuff to last and to work. And for men also, like you said, to kind of just lay it all out. And that can be a lot, because they're laying it out in front of two women, you and their woman. That's a lot.
That's heavy. True. And like that goes back to what I was saying about generational issues. Because
Yeah.
for a man, I mean, that's
And a black man.
yeah,
at
for a
that.
black man especially, like
Mhm.
you have that alpha tendency, and it's like, no, like we need to go see a real therapist. Like I'm not doing that, and I'm pretty sure you go through that. Sometimes.
We get those calls,
Oh, man.
and I got somebody for them. Right, we have black black
Right.
male therapists at the practice, and we have lots of conversation about like that specific dynamic. And there are some times that when I assess somebody that calls and I'm hearing what's going on, sometimes I will say, you know what, I really think this couple will benefit from a black male therapist because there's some things that they need to tackle, and I think it'll be best for a male therapist to do this work with them. And sometimes that does happen, and sometimes it doesn't matter if it's a male or a female, but there are certain couples or families that just benefits from that perspective.
Got you.
Mm-hmm.
Now, how many times have you had a black man sit on that couch and he's just like, I don't want to be here. She dragged me here. She dragged me here. What do we play? Come on. And then how long did it take for you to get through him and possibly see a tear?
Oh, not the tear.
I would say very early on, that was how most of the men that came to my practice was. And then a shift happened. And then the men were calling for therapy for themselves and for their partners. Like, we really need to do this. And there were some men that were really hard that they would come and, you know, fold their arms or their shoulders and, you know, give you a vague answer like, no, yes.
Right.
And so what I always do is I always ask questions about what was their experience with mental health, what was their experience coming to therapy, because I think that really predicts how you're going to behave in therapy. And if you have all these negative notions about what therapy is, you know, sometimes people come in and like, oh, well, you're just going to put me on medication. And I'm like, that's not what I do at all. That's not what I do. So a lot of time I am clearing up the misconceptions about what they think the process is. And I remind them that this is your session. So wherever we go is where you guys will lead it.
Got you.
And that seems to help. And then for the most part, they get pretty comfortable. And most of my male clients will be with me for years and then they move on. Or sometimes they move on and they come back for different reasons.
Right.
But I do think like a trend has happened. I think the more that we have it on TV, the more that celebrities and artists are talking about it, the more that it's in our shows. I think it's becoming more normalized than what it used to be 20 years ago.
Got you. That makes a lot of sense.
It does. And that's actually a beautiful thing because, you know, you think about like our grandparents and our parents, the boomers, you know, no one talked about anything. Like, there's been times I've been at like family reunions and I'm like, I see what's going on. Y'all don't want to have a conversation about this? Oh, we don't talk about that. But why not? Why can't we have a conversation? What do you think is the hardest? Why do you think it's so hard for older people to be open in this era of change?
So I think that they have a lot of history behind them that has a lot to do with historical trauma. I think that they have lived through many things that we have not. You know, they have lived through historical racism, trauma, Jim Crow, redlining, educational systems, poverty, prejudice, like all of those things. And I think that they learn to survive. And if you're living in survival, you do what you think you have to do to survive. And it wasn't asking them about their feelings, asking them what was on their mind. And so I think that they carry that with them, that you just keep it to yourself. You don't talk about this. I can even remember my great grandmother. She was a second mother to me. She passed away, and she asked me, I remember what I told her I wanted to go to school for. And she's like, oh, you want to do that? And I said, yeah, Grandma, I want to do that. And she says, I don't know. And I remember as I was finishing my master's program, and she was dying from cancer. And I remember having a conversation with her in her last days. And she tells me to come over to her, and she likes Billie Holiday. She's like, play me that Billie Holiday song. So I play her the song. And then she says, you know, this thing that you're doing. So she's talking about therapy. She's this thing that you're doing. I think it's going to go well.
Aw.
I think it's going to go well. And I think you're doing the right thing.
Oh, man.
And there are a lot of conversations like that I've had in my family where I'm usually the peacemaker. I'm the person who brings the pieces like, okay, we need to talk about this. We need to address this. And there was a pivotal moment with her and my actual grandmother that they were able to resolve some conflict between the two of them.
I love that.
And I would say it has a lot to do with the work that I've been doing with other people. And I think that the first work you get to do as a therapist is the work you do in your own family.
Is your test run. Probably
Yes.
growing up, you were putting pieces together all the time.
Oh, sure. Yes.
That's a huge
All the
responsibility
time.
on your shoulders.
Yes. Yes.
Since we're talking about kind of like generational curses and stuff,
Mhm.
I'm going to talk about trauma and stuff, but you made a very good point. They went through Jim Crow, all kind of stuff. That's stuff that was brought through slavery. Like, why would we even bring up mess within our own household when we got to deal with all this other oppression and stuff? Let's just stick it out or whatever. But how often do you have people that sit down and didn't realize that particular situations in childhood or things they went through adolescence or as they grew up contributes to how they act in relationships with, partners as they grow older?
I think some people did not know it until we start to unpack it. I do know, I think what was happening. So I look at things as shifts. And so I would say when we began to go through COVID-19 and everything started happening with George Floyd, just a little bit before that, I was getting an influx of clients coming in and they were questioning was some of the things that they were encountering was based on race. And they were like, I don't know, like this feels like this is happening to me because I'm a man, because I'm a black man, because I'm a black woman. And when we began to unpack like what was happening, they started realizing that there were some historical things in their family related to blackness and their experiences. And then they started feeling like this was happening in everyday life. And so that's how I think people started putting two and two together and started realizing like, oh, well, I experience these things in my individual life. And then I go home to my partner and we experience it together, but we're not talking about it. We're not really resolving it. And sometimes we're beefing with each other and we don't even know why, why we upset with one another. But I do remember so many conversations around the heart of COVID and around the social injustice with George Floyd. So many couples were at odds with each other. And I remember having so many tense sessions about like just all the things that were coming up. And for the first time, I think people were like ready to like dive into that. And that work just only continued. And there was more people coming wanting to talk about those specific things, those details, those traumas and insecurities and how that affected them in their life.
It's so deep when you really, when you really dig in and think about it. It's so much more than the surface level of why people even initially went to begin with. They could have been beefing over, like we talked, possible infidelity or texting another woman and realize all this trauma from childhood and grandmas and this and all that kind of stuff.
Sure.
So that's wow. Do you sometimes feel it's too heavy for you, or do you know how to disconnect when you leave the office, or do you feel partial to some of these couples?
There were times that as a therapist that I have taken breaks from certain topics as a therapist. And then there were times that I had to like restore myself. And then there were times that I would cry about the things that I would hear because it was blowing my mind. Because when I originally started this practice, I just wanted to help couples resolve things in their relationship so that we could have more Black and brown marriages. That was the goal. But then something shifted and I started to develop my niche around Black and brown families because when I opened my practice in the beginning, it was everybody that was coming, all walks of life and faith. But then, with Black people, you hear one thing, so-and-so told you, and now so-and-so's coming. And that's how I ended up turning my practice from an individual practice to a group practice because there were so many clients and couples coming in that I couldn't keep up with them. And the topics that we were talking about was really, I felt like they were near and dear to Black people. I didn't think that all the things that my couples who did not identify as a marginalized couple was going through.
Right.
And so that's how I felt like, you know what? I think this is what I'm supposed to be doing. I think this is the focus. And so that's how my niche became the niche. And people say like, oh, well, did you do it because you're a Black woman? No, I did it because that was who was coming and I was fulfilling the need at the time. And this is the work that people were coming to talk about. And so I felt like it was important to do that work.
But it has to feel good, too, that you're making a difference in your community and helping your people keep their marriages together.
I try. Sometimes it feels overwhelming. And sometimes I look up and I'm like, wow, you're still here. It's 10 years. You know, sometimes you just do the work. You don't always pay attention to where the timeline has gone. But it is a wonderful feeling when I get to be the fly on the wall in somebody's life, or I see someone thriving and surviving and living the life that they want to live.
Yeah, definitely.
That's beautiful. And then on the flip side, I know we want happy, strong marriages, but do you feel like sometimes, you know, if they do end up splitting up and they have that recognition, like they recognize, like, you know what?
Yeah.
I'm better off on my own. I gotta figure out myself.
Yeah.
That's also a win, I think so. And in some terms too.
So I obviously my goal is that I want them to stay together, but if they don't, this is how you can navigate that. Because there are some people who break up and it gets very messy. And I always say to them that if there's kids involved, what is the message that you want your kid to know? Like, if you end up not working out, do you want them to still be able to look at you both in a positive light? Or do you want to keep them in the middle? Because sometimes that's what happens. The kid gets in the middle, they get triangulated, and then there's all sorts of tension, and then they choose sides. And I try to help couples who do come for co-parenting how to navigate that when they're not able to make those decisions easily, because sometimes it gets very, very difficult. And I have seen couples break up, and I have seen them go into the chapter of, okay, now we're co-parenting and we're no longer a relationship.
Have you also seen some of your couples, or at least one of the spouses, move on and then come back like 3 years later with a new sidekick?
Not a sidekick.
I would say yes. I have seen people come back with somebody else, and you know, even though like my niche is couples, I do work with high achieving Black women who want to be in relationships. And so sometimes I see a variety of who's coming in until they figure out who's the one for them.
I see.
Yes.
So that would be considered, I guess, pre-marriage if they're trying to determine, okay,
no, this would be them wanting to come in to work on relationships, that they have a habit of not being able to maintain solid relationships, and they want to know why. And so they come to therapy to work on, okay, April, I need your help to figure out how I can maintain these relationships or one relationship.
Right.
But we live in a modern day world, and so we got people doing all sorts of things.
Or have you seen like a polygamous couple come in there, or like a man sit down with 3 women and be like, "Hey, fix us"?
Well, you know, I've seen it all.
Wow.
I would say after having a private practice for 10 years, being a therapist for 18, nothing surprises me anymore. And there's nothing that I haven't really seen.
Wow.
And I'm never really shocked about what goes on. All I do is try to meet people where they are. If that's what you want to work on, we gonna figure it out together. And that's what I do.
Okay.
No, I've always wanted to ask a therapist this question.
Yeah.
I'm actually not a therapist. I have 2 therapists myself, but
Awesome.
I'm not. I'm going to ask you. I'm not going to ask them. As a therapist, you have so many clients and you have so much on your mind that you're going through with like your clients. Do you by chance go to therapy as well to kind of unload all the stuff you have going on?
Sure. I wouldn't be able to do this work if I did not. I would say not every therapist will have a therapist, even though that's a saying that people say. But I do believe for me, having a therapist is helpful for my journey. I think that there are just things that go on in life, including for me, that I need time to be able to process and unpack and see what's coming up for me. And even though I've done therapy for myself for years, there are still things that are like an epiphany to me that I'm like, oh, this is still a thing. Wow. Yeah. So having somebody that I have the space to be able to process those things for me is still important. And my husband and I, we have gone to couples therapy many different times. We've had many different therapists for different reasons. And, you know, he was not a believer of therapy when I first met, but he's a firm believer now.
Oh, wow. That's good.
So we've had both individual and we've had couples, and I still have my own that I have with me all the time.
I love that for you.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I feel people who have the gift of pouring into others, someone got to pour into you.
Sure.
You're gonna go cuckoo crazy.
Oh my goodness.
Come on. And people have to remember that as your therapist, you are still a human being.
Sure.
You know, and you have your own feelings, your own emotions, and your own bull that you're dealing with at home.
Sure.
And you're dealing with other people's stuff all day long. So I love that.
Yeah.
You're able to practice what you preach. Literally.
Yeah. I'm pretty straightforward and authentic with my clients. Like if it's something going on for me, I'm pretty transparent. And I'll say to them, like, you know what? This is really a rough time for me. And I want you to know I'm fully present, but there's something going on in my life. And I just need you to know that because it might impact something. And then there's also moments where I've told you I've taken a break from therapy when I've had really significant family life things that have happened. And I needed time to process things for myself and for my family.
I just love your aura. Yes. You're real. Yeah.
Like, can we just keep you for like 4 hours, girl?
Okay. Look, for real. How much a session?
You can take my insurance. I was kidding. Totally kidding.
We can tap Apple Pay. I got you, girl, for 2 hours.
April, I did want to ask you if you have any social media that we can have our followers follow you. If anybody needs any kind of sessions, albeit like family or a couples therapy, where can they reach you?
Sure. So you can follow me on Instagram at ALA Therapy. I'm also on LinkedIn as April Lancit. We have a website. It's www.alatherapy.com. You can actually, there's a button you click that says Let's Talk, and it'll put whatever you need to put in there and we will get back to you. You also, if you want to get your degree, you can follow me at LaSalle University if you have interest in becoming a therapist. I'm the director of that program and I teach couples therapy.
Oh, that's amazing.
That's beautiful. And what do you have going on in the next couple months? Do you have any books or anything you've written or anything you have going on?
Oh my goodness. So I've been working on a book for 10 years and my goal is to get it out this year. This book is actually focused on Black and brown couples. So I'm hoping to finish it very soon. I have a relational podcast that is supposed to be coming out very soon. So stay tuned for that.
I want to subscribe to that one.
Yes.
Yeah. And I'm just always around in Philadelphia, popping up at different things, but I'm also licensed in other states. Okay. So if you are interested and you live in DC or Georgia,
Georgia.
I'm also available as a virtual therapist for those locations as well. Yes.
Girlfriend.
Wonderful. Well, y'all heard it first. So thank you so much, April, for being on the show.
Yes, thank you for having me. You both were so lovely.
And you as well. And thank you for what you do for our community.
Definitely.
Thank you.
Seriously.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And in closing, I'm Pamela Nicole, and I've got my gorgeous co-host,
Nia J.
And this is another episode of
Dynasty Queens.